If someone's never heard Vøvk's music, what would you like them to understand about the band right at this moment?
Oh, at this very moment, I would say that it's a pretty unique blend of like post-hardcore and progressive rock, I suppose, for Ukraine. And with this album in particular, it's a very interesting, at least I think so, insight in the war in general.
What is kind of the core idea that you are chasing with the music?
Yeah, with this album, we have aimed at uh, telling telling about the war without saying war in your face. We chose to tell it through metaphor of animals, nature, this general cycle, how war affects nature in general, how it suffers, and how it kind of mirrors the human emotional experience.
Yeah, that's quite a concept. How did it all, start, and how did it become the final product?
Uh, yeah, the process has been in general pretty long. Uh, the basic the groundwork for most of the songs was written quite before the war, if I remember correctly. But in time, we so it evolved musically, lyrically, especially lyrically, after the invasion. Since it's after the once we had a little change in with members, and the new lineup basically solidified the day before the invasion. So the war was basically the main factor in the like creative process during that album.
Do you remember like an exact moment when Litera kind of stopped being a bunch of songs and became this arc?
Yeah, it was about a couple of months into the invasion of 2022 when Sasha, our bassist and vocalist, started coming up with ideas for the lyrics in general and what to write about in general. And we were still kind of on the fence if we wanted to write in English or Ukrainian or kind of mix it both. That's why we had a one of our singles is released both in English and Ukrainian because then we were kind of on the fence. Uh, and After a couple of months, we decided that, I mean, since this album is basically very personal to us, the only way to properly express the emotional struggles we had back then is in Ukrainian and nothing else.
Yeah, you mentioned the lineup changes. So, were you there already for the 2019 album?
No, I wasn't. I was the one who joined basically at the invasion with the drummer as well. Because me and our drummer were playing in another band that had a last concert, and coincidentally, Vøvk lost their drummer and the guitarist. And we spoke to Sasha at that our last concert from the previous band, and it was a kind of a match made in heaven there.
How do you see this lineup changes have changed the music of Vøvk from the lair?
But pretty tremendously actually, yeah. Because since Layer was somewhat of like a search of the band's musical identity. It was kind of a mishmash between like there was a bit of prog, a bit of stoner even, and it wasn't really Sasha put it pretty well. Like it wasn't cohesive as a piece, but it was uh, it was like more like pure art. That it was just they wrote what felt right and they put it out. With Litera though, it was a bit more streamlined because we were fixed on the genre. It was let's say we knew what we wanted it to sound like.
Yeah, how is the band dynamic in a trio? How is the songwriting process?
Uh, it's actually pretty pretty streamlined, as I said, because we have Sasha had a lot of the music pretty ready for this album, and me as a guitarist, I tweaked a bunch of guitars. I blended since I'm the only guitarist. I had to kind of blend in two guitars into one, so we could like play that at least live or record it somewhat interestingly. And our drummer Janne, he basically wrote most of the drums from scratch because he has a quite a different play style from the other drummers. And the drums, I would say, is the like the most altered bit of this album, so compared to the last one.
Are you writing new songs at the moment, and how does that work kind of differ from you working on the older material?
Yes, we are working on new songs, not that actively at the moment because we're still in the aftermath of this release because we recently launched the vinyls, so it was like the final stop that okay, this album is done, we can kind of go next. Uh, but yeah, the songwriting for the new stuff is pretty conventional. We someone comes up with an idea, and we just together, usually in the studio, we just together like alter some stuff, add new stuff, and most of the work is done in Guitar Pro, so we have everything recorded and neatly tight packaged.
Yeah, let's go to the songs then. There's, of course, you already mentioned the Tiger slash Tour, the bilingual release that, like you said, you were still on the fence of on the language. So, what kind of taught you, or what kind of teachings you got from that song? And after that, going with the Ukrainian language, of course.
Yeah, we after we released it, we saw that actually most of the listeners kind of preferred the Ukrainian version because there's a bit of a trend, at least in we noticed in this subgenre in music that too many bands are trying to be like more Americanized, more homogenous, and people want to hear like uh, different perspectives from different languages. Like if you like uh, a metal from Finland would be way cooler to hear them sing in Finnish, or someone from Sweden Swedish, and vice versa. And after that release, we kind of understood that yeah, Ukrainian would be kind of at least true to us and maybe a bit more unique.
At which point did like the nature elements as metaphors come into play? As you said, talking about the war without saying war.
Uh, yeah, pretty much immediately. Sasha had a bunch of thoughts in general once the invasion struck, and there were a couple of events that also have influenced most of the lyrics from the album. And he just decided to basically write uh, what what he feels and what we feel as well through this uh, natural metaphor through animals, through nature, and their like how they work together, and because of the war, how they get destroyed or reborn even.
Is there a message in these songs?
The message is pretty much that uh, war is pretty bad, war is hell, and the message is that let's say people who live through war and experience it do not necessarily feel like we are used to from the media or from the books. You have like a billion different thoughts about it, and anything that happens, any big event, any whatever whatever might happen in the war, it might alter your perspective. And this album kind of highlights a bunch of different, let's say, periods of the war that we have that that were during the writing of it. Like for example, the Leleka song was written after the Kachovka water dam got blown up, and all the surrounding area got flooded. So that were the symbolism of the storks flying over the water and so forth.
Okay, and how did the spoken word then come into the Leleka?
The spoken word, since it's basically about the Kachovka Dam, we wanted to have uh, like it felt very the song felt very American football-y, and it felt natural to have something like a bridge that was a bit more atmospheric, and we invited our friend Maxim Chukhlib, who also has his own musical bit, but he's most known for being a musical journalist in Ukraine. And he has a very distinct, deep voice that very much fitted uh, the vibe that we wanted to go, which is to make it sound like it's a report of the Kachovka Dam being opened or built by then, back in the Soviet day. So we just put it into it there, so it was more obvious about what event this song is.
Talking about the reality of the war, how did that affect your studio process? How did you work and keep the momentum going?
Yeah, this studio, the recording of it, if you meant by that, it was somewhat quick. It was disrupted. The main problem was power, and it still is a problem with power because Russians have been bombing our power plants. There's one right next to me that is, I don't know how it's still going. And since there's no power, you can't record anything. You can't do anything. You can't play. And at the time, we didn't. The concept of a power station was not a really. It was not really well known. No one really had portable power stations, and no one was independent as much as they are right now. So yeah, the main hurdle was power constraints. There were a bunch of times that we wake up, we gotta go to the studio, but there's an air raid siren, and we get bombed. We have to go. We gotta go to shelter. There were about 5 times like that, and then we went to the studio, start recording. Power goes out. Well, gotta restart that. But thankfully, we were well prepared enough to make all this suffering at least manageable.
You've been playing concerts too during the war, and it would seem that like the air raids and blackouts, how much does that make the gigs, difficult at the moment? But then again, how is the atmosphere at concerts at the moment?
Yeah, we did a little tour in support of the album across the cities that we deliberately chose, the cities that not many people go to at the moment, because it was really important to us to just bring at least a bit of normalcy to people, and we really could see that in cities way closer to the front line. And as of problems with gigs, I suppose we were quite lucky during that. We didn't have. I don't remember if we had any air raid sirens during that. But a lot of the venues have moved underground, and so they double as a shelter. But if a venue is pretty big and it can be underground, it's a conventional venue. Whenever it's air raid siren, especially if it's near the front, then yeah, you gotta pause. Everyone's gotta go to shelter or wherever they want to go, and once it's done, you go back to business.
Maybe going back to the music, of course, we have to talk about the song Promin and Johannes Persson's feature. How did that actually happen in real life? And well, how was the process? How did you direct him to perform in Ukrainian?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. It was actually our kind of just uh, we were thinking about it as like a more like a dream, and like that would be like incredible if we had him on because he's a good friend of Ukraine. He's very vocal about it, and we're big fans of Cult of Luna in general. And Sasha decided to just DM him on Instagram, and he really just accepted it with no problem. The only caveat was obviously singing in Ukrainian. He was a bit anxious about that, and we had to record to him like phonetic tutorials how to spell some words, just in case. But he recorded that literally in a day. Sent us the thing. Said if it's not good, I will not be upset. But thank you, and it actually turned out to be perfect for us. It was great. He's been a great help, and we really appreciate his support in that.
Okean still closes with Anton Slebakov. So, what did you want that final monologue kind of leave listeners with?
Yeah, we actually didn't know at the start. We really wanted to invite Anton to that song because it was fitting the structure-wise of the song, and because we just respect Anton as a lyricist immensely. He's one of the like I wouldn't afraid of that word like legendary like lyricist in Ukraine. We just trusted him with like finishing up the album. We gave him the lyrics. This song, here's your part. We can extend it, shorten it, however you want, and just write what you feel. And it turns out he actually had a somewhat a text ready, as well after the bombing of the Kakhovka Dam. So it was also kind of a symbolic thing. And he wrote on that, and it turned out to be a pretty like incredible like a summary of the whole album. While all the entire album before that is somewhat like trying to be vague, trying to be all metaphorical and like fancy. This final monologue more like locks you in and just explains more or less in your face, just as a like a final sentence.
You could tell about one song of your choosing that we haven't talked about yet, and tell a bit about the background.
Hmm. Um, yeah. I would like to. My second favorite song is Mur. That one is kind of personal for all of us because that one is actually it's about. Uh, I'm gonna backtrack a bit. During the air sirens, in the first months, there was a rule of two walls between you and the windows. So if the debris from the drone like hits your window, so you have two walls between that, so you can be at least relatively safe. So the normalcy was usually in the night, air raid siren goes off. There's big explosions outside, and you go in the corridor because Ukrainian apartments have like somewhat long corridors, and they have thick walls surrounding the thingy. And this song is exactly about that feeling, about being between two concrete walls, and thinking if tomorrow ever begins for you, because the not the verse, the chorus is tomorrow is just a dream away, because we had to sleep in the corridors of our buildings.
Yeah, that is very heavy hitting. Well, you already mentioned the vinyl of Litera, and to me, Litera, if you can say era, looks as intentional as it sounds. So the artwork has been phenomenal. So how do you kind of approach the visual side of things?
As it was a incredibly long and hard process for us to like pinpoint the exact style we want for everything, uh, uh, because we had a bunch of different concepts for that. But of great help was our friend Anton Schifferson, who also has his musical thing, Ship Her Son. He designed the cover, and all the artwork was made by Diogo Soares from Portugal. He's a pretty well-known artist for the metal bands. We worked with him quite a bit, and his vision really helped us to like concretely understand what we want from this album. And then Anton Schifferson kind of combined it into this neat, slick packaging, I would say.
Yeah, as you said in the beginning, that like the vinyl publication was kind of like the last chapter of the Litera era, and the situation in Ukraine, of course, is at least not better at the moment. So, what is next for Vøvk?
Well, next for Vøvk is we have been invited for a couple of shows for the festivals in Ukraine. Thankfully, festivals are still a thing. It's a bit of a headache for the organizers, I'm sure. But Western Ukraine is somewhat okay during the as long as like air raid sirens go. So one of the biggest festivals we have is Fajne Misto in Lviv, and thankfully it's still going, and we've been invited for that. And yeah, after Litera, in general, we will focus on the new album. Hopefully, it will come sooner rather than later.
How much are you thinking about new music already? You said that maybe slowly you are starting on new music. Is there some ideas already of the musical direction?
Yes, yes, we have a bit of a let's say a blueprint of a couple of songs. I wouldn't want to spoil anything because we don't know if that is final or that, so we're not sure ourselves. But yes, the process is there, and hopefully it comes sooner rather than later.